Welcome everyone. I'm the founder and CEO of LikeMinds. I'm your host for today, and I'm also one of the sort of founding volunteers for Community Hood. Community Hood is a community of about 1,200 community builders, where we, as of now, the main focus is to do these events regularly. We try to do 2 events a month. And there are different formats of events, one of which is Roundtable. And in Roundtable, what we do is we pick a topic from the community where we figure out what are the challenges that people are facing, community builders are facing, and then we try to sort of aggregate learning from some of the people who have experience in that area, and then we try to bring them here and learn from their experiences. We thought, it's a good time to have this conversation with everyone that if you've been given certain budget by your management, or you have as a management or a founder allocated certain budget towards community building, how do you measure that value of a brand community, and how do you communicate the value that the community is creating to the leadership or internally to yourself or your team to keep sort of justifying, investing in community for long run. I think this is a question which a lot of community builders are facing. In fact, like when we interact with senior folks as well, a lot of them say that, hey, we know that there is some value that will be created if we create community, but how do we measure it? And that's what we're trying to understand with this roundtable today. The way we've sort of structured this roundtable is, one, we want to talk about different types of outcomes. So 2 types of outcomes we've seen generally come from community. One is the engagement outcome, and second is the business outcome. So now in terms of engagement outcome, for different type of communities, and I don't want to be very comprehensive right now, but in general for different type of communities, people would measure DAU, daily active users, or daily active members in the community, weekly active, monthly active. So that shows how frequently people are coming, in your community. But more importantly, not just them coming once should be important. It should also be important that how many times are they coming again in the community, right? So there is this metric which a lot of people measure, which is called stickiness. So out of, let's say, number of members who visit your community once a month, how many of them on an average are coming daily? Like that shows how frequently people are coming in your community. So this is a very, very important metric when you are measuring engagement, in your community. Similarly, so this is on the frequency of visit sort of side. Then there is, the amount of content created. That's also an engagement outcome. So it could be measured in, let's say, number of posts, number of likes. But, it's also important to measure, let's say if there are 100 posts being created in the community, how many of those posts are getting answers? How many answers are coming on each post, or how many comments are coming on each post, or let's say how many useful answers are coming on each post, right? So that's very, very important to sort of also keep a track on. Again, the key principle here is there are certain metrics which will measure sort of top of the funnel, but there are also certain metrics which would measure on a per top of the funnel what is the engagement in it. So here on a per post, how many answers are coming. Similarly, let's say if your community is event heavy, and which is what we also have at Community Hood, right? So one of the metric that we measure is the number of event attendees that are coming in the event. But even more important measure for us is percentage of those people who stay till the end. And I mentioned it in our last event as well, where Nitesh did that workshop, where out of 46-7 people, I think about 34-35 people actually stayed back for more than an hour, and we feel it's a good job done, especially for such a long event. So that's how you can measure some of these engagement outcomes, and it should not be just like top of the funnel. It should not be a one-time metric, but it should also, like, you should also see quality specific metrics as well, not just quantity. So these are more like the second line points here are more quality centric metrics. Then comes business outcomes, which probably is more important and more relevant for this session. We kept this because we wanted to make sure that you understand that engagement outcome is not the main outcome. Generally, people want, like, especially for brand communities, there has to be some business outcome. Even if you're not delivering that outcome in short term, it is very, very important that you have a sight on the outcome and you know when and how the outcome will be delivered. And a community which is not able to generate business outcome has less chances of getting budgets from the company or the management compared to a community which is delivering business outcomes. So it's very, very important we focus on this. Now, these are some of the general business outcomes that we've seen work better. So this is my personal favorite. I truly believe that a community built well, would have some customer retention signals where, let's say, it could be number of repeat buyers for a D2C brand, or it could be number of repeat transactions for, let's say, a fintech product. It could be number of renewals for a subscription product. It could also be NPS, where, let's say, the main product itself, let's say, is it's difficult to figure out retention, but this is also a little bit more towards the output side, less on the engagement side. But I feel NPS is somewhere in between. It's like a short term. You could also have an NPS for each event, like we do here at Community Wood. We measure NPS of each event as well. So this is the first category of business outcomes. So imagine you are able to increase the repeat buyer percentage from 10% to 15% over a period of, let's say, 1 month. So you are literally increasing the repeat buyers by 50%, and that's like additional, like there is no additional cost that is going, right? It's directly impacting the profit. Those additional 5% repeat buyers would increase the profit of the company because there is no marketing cost that has gone to increase that number of 10, like from 10% to 15%. So for example, one of our clients recently actually saw this increase in repeat buyers when they, implemented a community within their existing product or within their existing app. So, this is, like I said, my favorite one. And if you do retention well, I'm sure there will be referrals which will drive acquisition, which is what brings me to the next point, where, customer acquisition is something that can also be driven from your community. And in fact, one of the volunteer experts today will probably talk about this in more detail, but you could use community to acquire, let's say, convert free customers or free partners to paid partners, right? Like that could also be one measure. So you're literally acquiring customers from there. You could also measure number of referrals that your existing members are generating because of the community or before and after the community initiative. You could see number of shares happening from the community. You could see number of mentions on social media that you are able to generate. These are generally some of the outcomes that people measure. Then there is customer insight. So this is generally useful when you are building a community for, let's say, a product, and you want to take a lot of feedback from your users. So you could measure number of feature requests, and more importantly, you could measure number of feature requests implemented by the organization based on how many features requests came from the community. So this could be very, very interesting, because a feature implemented by understanding from the needs of the community is very, very powerful. Like being a product person, I can vouch for it. The amount of iteration it can help us save is phenomenal. Similarly, a lot of D2C brands could use communities to take feedback on new products whenever they're launching a new product, or in general, any new product. You could actually use like even a small, let's say, a WhatsApp community could be useful for this, where you aggregate your power users and just have a small sort of community engagement there, almost like a group discussion happening in the online world, and keep it very, very focused on what you want to know from them, and create transparency. And I'm sure you'll start seeing some of these business outcomes from your community initiative. Then UGC creation. Now, UGC could also be engagement sort of outcome, but in a lot of companies where community is the main product, For example, let's say if you're creating a social network, or let's say when your business model is primarily advertising, or let's say you are creating a paid membership community. In those cases, ability to create UGC from the community is literally a big business outcome, because that's how the engagement will come and that's how you'll monetize. But even in other companies, if you can help sort of UGC being created from the members of the community, like how we are doing this in this event. There are certain volunteers who are passionate about this ecosystem. We are recording this video. In a way, this is UGC being created as well along with the event, right? So you could use that, and it literally saves a lot of cost for the organization in general when you are able to generate content. And these are generally experts. So if you get an expert to write content for you, it is generally very expensive. So it's very important to use community for UGC and leverage community to generate content, which can actually probably take away the requirement or reduce the requirement of having more in-house content writers. Similarly, community can be used for customer support, or even more important, customer success, where certain members of the community are delivering value to other members, or communities helping reduce number of support calls or support tickets in the community. So yeah, these are some of the business outcomes that we've seen. Now, the next topic which I want to touch upon is what is generally, let's say, even if the management is aligned or not aligned, what is the time frame you need to make sure, let's say if you get budgets, or if you ask for budget from the organization, or if you are a founder, you are planning to allocate budget into community, what is the time horizon that you need to think when you're starting such initiatives? My thumb rule is anything less than 6 months should not be done. Ideally 1 year, but 6 months, anything less than 6 months should not be done. But there are different factors, right? So what kind of community goal are you trying to achieve? Let's say if it's purely market feedback, you could just start with a WhatsApp group and maybe collect something within 3 months or even lesser in terms of feedback. Whereas let's say if your key goal for launching a community is to improve customer retention, it literally requires a lot of time to measure retention, which is what I've covered here, that it depends on community goals. It depends on the data which is being measured. Let's say if you want month 3 retention to be improved. Now, if you want to see 3-month trend line for that, it has already taken 6 months to get those 3 data points, that what was month 3 retention in, let's say, April, June and July. April, May and June would require me to start measuring data from Jan, Feb, March, so that I get to know what is the monthly retention in April. So it depends on the data being measured. It depends on the community age as well. So if a community is, let's say, new, it generally takes a lot more time to seed that culture in the community, seed the value that you're delivering in the community, make your members accustomed to the rituals in the community. And like anything less than 1 year in new communities, I personally believe doesn't make sense unless it's done on, let's say, a third party, like a WhatsApp group or a Facebook group as a quick experiment. Maybe then it could be 3 to 6 months. But if you're doing it, like, let's say, on a third part, on a white label community software, or building it by yourself in-house, anything less than 1 year for me, is a big red flag. When you're talking to your management or you're thinking it inside in your own organization. A lot of times data availability might also be an issue. So when you start measuring data, you might see that, it's been already 1 month or 2 months, and then you discover, hey, I should also measure, let's say, how many people engage in the community 4 times or comment 4 times a month by within the first week of their onboarding, and then you realize, hey, you've not been tracking this data. So a lot of times you'll realize that when you start the journey and you start measuring the data, you will see that there are new data points that will be required, and that's also one reason why anything less than 6 to 12 months doesn't make sense when you're building a community of your own. Now, this is another very, very important part, where how do you tactically get buy-in from the leadership? And like our thumb rule is, pitch community as a solution to a business problem, as well as a solution to a problem that some of the consumers are facing. So the way we look at community-led growth is this: you create a community platform or a community initiative which is solving a genuine problem for your members, where peer-to-peer value add is very important. And because of that use case or that problem being solved, even if the use case is not directly monetizable, you are able to create a lot of engagement and retention, which can then drive the main or the peripheral business that you are offering to the community. Now, this will only happen if you're solving a genuine problem for your community, and then in return, the community will solve a genuine problem for the business. If that alignment is clear. And then keep sharing reports and data, like some of the volunteers who we spoke to earlier this week. Very common trend was, monthly reporting is something that should be done by like at least minimum. We had Minang suggesting that he actually sends a report every month to his clients where he's consulting to different community creators and community founders. Last section is around measuring UGC success. A lot of times communities seen directly as a way to create UGC. Some of the standard metrics that people look at for any content being created is how many reactions are coming on a specific content, how many upvotes or downvotes are coming on a specific content, how many comments are coming on a specific content. These are like soft indicators of, or maybe how many shares are coming on a specific content. These are like soft indicators that indicate quality of the UGC. And most UGC platforms, most social platforms would use one or combination of these parameters to sort of increase the reach of a specific content on the platform. Now, you should also analyze different types of UGC which are getting popular. So try to structure the UGCs types in your community and see what are the type of content that is getting more popular. So I'll give you an example. Before LikeMinds, I used to run this company called Purify, which was essentially a social network of doctors where we had about 50% of Indian doctors using it. Now, when we started, we opened a discussion forum once we had about 10,000 doctors on the platform. Initially, there were all types of content that were coming, and it included content like violence against doctors. But we picked, case discussion as the common type of UGC, which was also popular, but it was also value adding for other members to read. So it's very, very important to keep an eye on different type of UGC that is getting popular in the community. And then you can train the community to sort of, or create a culture in the community to probably have a focused conversation on those type of topics. You should also understand whether the UGC is helping you save cost or increase revenue. So when you don't know, what is the value, at least try to think in these two brackets, whether it is something that saves cost, whether it is something that increases revenue. As simple as it sounds, but it is always, helpful to start from this lens. And a lot of times you'll see, you never thought that this is a business value that is being created, but the community is actually creating that. And then, again, re-emphasizing from where I started, it is important to see the number of returning users to check whether the UGC is helping to retain members or not. To figure out what are the goals that you have and what are the metrics that can help you sort of measure whether the goal is being achieved or not. So look for OKR, look for there are different methodology to derive metrics for specific goals. Once you figured out what metrics you want to, what metrics are relevant, start tracking that on your app or website, or let's say if you're doing it on WhatsApp or Slack, all those platforms also today give enough data. And then there are third parties also who are now using like that data to give you these actionable insights. So first step is to know what you want to measure. Second is to track the data and then interpreting that data. And this is very, very important. You need to be mindful of what is a correlation versus what is a causal. So let's say if you start a community where you only give access to specific buyers of your product, a lot of times you'll see the people who are in the community are buying more. but this might also be a correlation data, because people who are more interested in your product are joining your community, and that's why they are buying more. So it's important to know whether a specific trend is causal or correlation, and then adapt and improve and figure out what is working, what is not, and maybe figure out what metrics are relevant and what metrics are not. And we do this very often. Like every quarter we figure out that there are few metrics which have now become irrelevant and few metrics which are now become more relevant. So we keep changing the metrics that we look at almost every quarter now.